And when it does, we will destroy it with 10 missiles. Pakistan has no shortage of missiles. Indus River is not India's family property. Raking up Indus water treaty issue, Munir slammed India and claimed that the suspension of the treaty could place 250 million people at risk of starvation. Following the Pahalgam terror attack, India has put the year-old treaty in abeyance. Now, on this issue, I am joined by Commodore Sri Uday Bhaskar, Director Society for Policy Studies and former Director of IDSA. Sir, this has come in wake of his nuclear threat, comparing India as a Ferrari with the Pak dumper that the Pakistan is. But the bottom line is, sir, he says, in America, and we will play out the stills where he is very cozy with the American military leadership, we will blow the dams. My question to you, sir, is, did we miss anything in last 6 months when it came to Munir?
I think India has got a reasonably accurate assessment about the current Pakistani leadership represented by Field Marshal Munir. And the fact that he has been raising the ante in terms of his rhetoric about trying to intimidate India. We saw this before Op Sindoor, we saw it after Op Sindoor, and now in the United States, he is rattling the nuclear saber. This is not the first time that Pakistan has engaged in this kind of shrill anti-India threats being posed from another, being articulated from another country, particularly the United States. And my reading is that, to your question, I think India has a reasonably accurate assessment about this particular army officer, Field Marshal Munir, and the manner in which he has elevated himself to be able to steer domestic politics in Pakistan in a manner that he thinks would help him to ward off a series of challenges that he has. That's the first observation. The second, if I may, Kartikeya, I think this is part of a familiar pattern where Pakistani leadership, particularly the military leadership, when it is in power, has tried to use the international forum to draw attention, number one, to Kashmir, and secondly, to play the victim card. So if you read the subtext of what has been said by Field Marshal Munir in the United States, there is absolutely no reference to the fact that Pakistan, in the eyes of the world, is a country that is nurturing terrorism. More often than not, it has been called as the cradle of such jihadi terrorism, not just by the Indian establishment or by Indian analysts and academics, but even those within the United States who track South Asia and the nuclear issue. So I think Field Marshal Munir seems to be under the mistaken assumption, that's the way he's operating, that he would be able to grab the attention, first of all, of President Donald Trump, who, as we know, has taken a position currently which is inimical to India's own interests. So that is the larger context or framework in which I would locate his remarks. And he has also, I think, made a very imprudent kind of threat again, that in relation to the Indus water, that as you're playing it out even as I speak, that if India builds the dam,
yes,
they will destroy 10 missiles. I think this is perhaps the height of irresponsible remarks. But then this is in keeping with what experts have said for decades, that Pakistan is the only country in the world where the military has the finger on the button. There are 9 nuclear weapon powers, 5 within the United Nations Security Council. There is India, Pakistan, Israel, outside of the NPT, and North Korea. And if you look at all these 9 nations, it is only Pakistan that has this kind of a command and control. So it's in keeping with what I would call as a strategic culture that we associate with the Pakistani leadership and its military.
Okay. My second question, sir, is when he saber rattles on nuclear issue, when he meets people in America, the top military brass, should we say that the Pakistan has again made its importance very, very clear to United States of America, which was there in early 80s when the Afghan war was on? Is it because of Iran? Why is he getting so much of importance from the American establishment? A lot of people in India never expected this coziness, especially in context of an army general. It's something new. Post 91, it was not visible. Even for me, it's something very new.
Well, there are a number of reasons why the United States currently, I think, is treating Pakistan and Field Marshal Munir in this manner. You're right about drawing attention to Iran, because you'll recall that when Israel had carried out its attack on Iran, there was a tacit support by the United States politically, diplomatically, and even within the military context, there was a fair amount of surveillance and intelligence being provided. And we gather from published reports that there was a plan B for Pakistan and its airspace to be used in the event there was an exigency that would have warranted direct US military support. So the short answer, Iran is one factor. But more importantly, and I think at the tactical level, what we have seen in recent weeks, particularly after Ops Hindu, is that President Donald Trump has taken umbrage to what he thinks that India has not given him adequate credit. And we know the flip side, that the Pakistani leadership, particularly Field Marshal Munir, has gone on record recommending that President Donald Trump be awarded the Nobel Peace Prize. So that is the second factor. We have been, hearing from well-wishers within the United States and in the Beltway that there has been a fair amount of personal pique as far as President Donald Trump is concerned, which is why we had something very unprecedented, the US President hosting a military chief for lunch. And that too a rather expansive and, I would say unhurried lunch in terms of what would be the new contour of US-Pakistan cooperation, including the possibility that Pakistan would become the next Saudi Arabia. I mean, this is the kind of, shall we say, envisioning of the bilateral by the White House at this point. So these are some of the contributory factors. And if you look at the Indian reaction, I think we should be taken for what it is, a threat, an attempt to garner international attention. And Pakistan's own track record, whether it was the Kargil war or what happened in the early 90s, when Pakistan was openly seen to be supporting terrorism directed against India, all of which, by the way, the strategic and security community in the United States is more than aware. There are books on the subject. And this, Kartika, is the irony, if I may just add this last point. The United States under President Bush went to war against Iraq because they suspected Iraq of having WMD, weapons of mass destruction, and an anxiety that Iraq would be supporting terrorism. This was 2003. The United States' worst case scenario in relation to the Taliban after 9/11 was that the Taliban, a non-state entity at that time, would acquire access to WMD. And this would be the combination that the United States security establishment dreaded. And here is the irony that Pakistan is the state visibly which acquired nuclear weapons with support from both China and the United States, is openly supporting terrorism. I mean, the jargon has a word called nuclear weapon enabled terror. And here is the field marshal being hosted in the United States. So that compounds ironies in a manner that would have seemed unimaginable till we actually see it unfold. Karthikeyan?
Before I close the show, let me ask this question to you. I was just thinking about it. The last general in Pakistan, Yahya Khan, was someone who was close to both the Chinese and the American leadership. He did the middle act between Kissinger and Mao. Now you have Munir in Pakistan, who is both close to Beijing and Washington. So in this context, what becomes the Indian challenge? Because he is in the same position, and we all understand that America still wants to cut a deal with China.
No, the only difference, Karthikeya, is that at that time the United States and China did not have any strategic channel for communication. And yes, Pakistan played a role, and Henry Kissinger was the principal interlocutor at that time. The strategic framework has changed. The bilateral context has changed. The United States and China now have a fairly robust line of communication. And I would say that this would be misplaced certitude on the part of Field Marshal Munir if he thinks that he would be able to be the go-between as far as Russia and China are concerned. Because today, President Donald Trump is in a position to pick up the phone. It's only a question of whether or not President Xi Jinping would answer the call immediately without adequate staff work by his own team in Beijing. So I would not subscribe to that kind of formulation that Field Marshal Munir sees himself playing this very, very critical role as far as Sino-US relations are concerned. Karthikeya?
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for joining me and giving us perspective on this issue where Munir on American soil has threatened India on multiple issues that are bilateral in nature between India and Pakistan. And this is the first. So this is all I had on point today. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you and good night.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News 9. English news as it.
What are you watching, Dad?
Don't you often say, think before investing in the stock market? So I'm trying to gain some knowledge.
From whom?
That's this stocks expert. Makes great educational videos. Gives good investment tips too.
Dad, don't rely on such videos. Do your own research or contact a SEBI-registered investment advisor. In the name of education, some influencers often misguide investors. You will have to bear the losses.
Score condoms?
It's over there.
क्या ये different sizes में आता है?
Actually, sir, size matter नहीं करता.
तो फिर क्या matter करता है?
The hardness
Of the condom.
of what's inside.
For the first time ever, presenting Hard Rock Gel, the hardness gel for men.
अब free हर score condoms के 10 pack के साथ.